Hey everyone, this is Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 62 of Album of the Day. Before we get into today's review, I just want to talk about the shirt I'm wearing. I'm wearing a shirt for a record company that's been very supportive to me over the last few years. Yep, Rock Records, and I just want to let you guys know I've been included on the honorary completist list. And Yep Rock, which means basically I get sent every CD Yep Rock releases in a full year. Every month. Anyway, aside from that, let's get on to the review. So today's artist is a band from Australia who are definitely sort of in the indie category. The name of the band is Tame Impala. They've been around since about, I think, 2009 or something. Yeah, I think that's how long they've been around, because their debut album, Inner Speaker, came out in 2010, which certainly got a huge number of acclaim, that's for sure. Tame Impala was sort of a band that had kind of a sound that was that had a lot of nostalgia to it, that sounded like music from like pop rock music from the 60s and the 70s that they blended in onto Inner Speaker and on their sophomore album released in 2012, Lonerism, which is how I first found out about the band. I picked up the album, listened to it, and I fell in love with it. For its there was just so many good things about that album that which included great guitar riffs, really good keyboards, nice bass lines, some vocals that had a lot of Lennon McCartney kind of sort of vibes to them, and then some lyrics that showed the band improving in a ton of ways on Lonerism. So highly recommend Lonerism. And I'm here to review Tame Impala's latest album that came out in July. Came out in July of 2015. Not exactly sure what the release date is for this record, but it just came out last month, and it's sort of got a different direction that Tame Impala is going for on this album. Now, just to let you know, Tame Impala it's like a Kevin Parker. Kevin Parker is the leader of the group. On the records, it's just kind of him doing everything, but live, it's him with a band doing this stuff. So I'm here to review Tame Impala's new album. The album is called Currents. And as you can see, I have the CD version of it. This is Tame Impala's third studio album. And there's what it looks like. I'm gonna open this up. There's the disc right there, and let me show you the artwork underneath it. Really cool artwork on this album, I must say. Definitely fits in with the vibe of this record. There are more synthesizers on this record than lead guitars, just to let you know. Little insert. Got the liner notes. Just a few photos and the liner notes, no lyrics. So it's very simple way this was packaged. But yeah, that's Currents by Tame Impala. Now let's talk about the sound of this record. This record definitely it still has a very nostalgic feel, but in kind of a different sense stylistically. It's not really nostalgic in the sense of it sounds kind of like the Beatles, but more nostalgic in the sense that there's definitely a more dancey tone to this album. And it sounds kind of like some music from... It definitely has inspiration coming from music from like from like the 80s, and like there's so it's kind of a big influence from like electronic artists going on in this record. So like but there's still plenty of like nostalgic guitars, and there's still plenty of really nice notes on this album provided via a guitar. But then you have Kevin Parker doing these really diverse and very wide wide arrangements of synthesizers, like basically, inspired by a lot of different kinds of dance music. So the opening track is the nearly 8-minute epic, "Let It Happen," which features basically one musical sequence after another. Definitely a very adventurous track. Track. And and this is really a great way to open this record, despite it being really long, because it really does hook you into the whole record, and it's really just that track is really just definitely one of the standouts on this record. And this was like the first song released from this album, and like when the track was released, everybody scrambled at like the new sound that Tame Impala was going for on this new record, seeing that there was definitely a change stylistically on this record. So people were a little conflicted, but I am absolutely loving this track. Everything from the really nice some killer synth, just some really killer synth notes on this song. And then there's like a fuzzed out guitar outro, and then it also features the use of a vocoder, so there's a little Daft Punk influence going on in this record, on this song in particular. It also does show some of Kevin's songwriting abilities too, on this track. So there's definitely plenty of relatable lyrics on this album for sure. And then there's also these whooshing synth string, and there's also these whooshing synth strings at one point in the song, and then it also contains the use of a broken machine loop. I like how when Kevin Parker basically just he takes one little synth note, creates a little loop of it, and then it creates this little groove. So it's really a creative thing going on this track. Everything just all comes together on this song, to make it easily one of the best tracks of 2015. Some other good tracks on this album include there's the really there's the really nostalgic track, "The Moment," which has this really nice I really like the nostalgia that Tame Impala blends into their music, and this song is definitely a perfect example of that. So the groove on here is really nice, and then you got this pretty cool Middle Eastern synth in the middle of it too. It's showing that this is showing that basically Kevin Parker is getting influenced by a lot of different kinds of pop music on this album, to create a record that's definitely kind of showcases the synthesizer as a way of basically making something very adventurous. And definitely one of my favorite tracks on this album is the track "Yes, I'm Changing." The lyrics on it are very relatable. It's basically a song, Kevin reflecting on changing, and basically reflecting on life as like an older person who's moving on. And then there's a lyric in it about how, and then there's a lyric in it about how some people say they never changed, but the truth is they do. A very relatable line for sure. Uh, sure. So yeah, it's definitely a very relatable track for me because I'm sort of going through those same sort of issues as what Kevin is going through like as you can see from this record. And this one has kind of a like soul. This track definitely kind of has kind of a soul feel to it, especially with the use of the especially with the twinkling, with like the shiny piano on here. Like I don't know if it's an electric piano or a toy piano. I think it's electric piano, but yes, I am hearing like a little bit of toy piano on this record too. So it could be either one of those things. Um, songs, songs like and that dreamy synth at the end sounds pretty nice. And then there's also the use of some sound effects towards the end of like you know, people walking and talking down the street and like and like cars going by on here. And then there's also some really nice synth instrumentals on this album that really are definitely some very ear-cleansing synth pieces that tie the record together in like definitely a beautiful way, that's for sure. Um, and the disco-oriented track, The Less I Know The Better, definitely has definitely is a good track because like it has such an addictive groove to it, which Kevin Parker kind of described this track as kind of like dorky, nostalgic kind of disco, but like nothing too cheesy or anything like that. But like the funny thing is how Kevin said that this track sounds like something that probably shouldn't be on a Tame Impala record. So yeah. So that's kind of a funny way of you describing the track. Being the track. And then the track Love/Paranoia is definitely a good track too because like the lyrics are also pretty reflective. Basically, Kevin's reflecting on how he may not be as honest as he ought to be sometimes, and also talking about how there are like moments and feelings that you deal with that like you're asking yourself, was it really nothing? Because it made me feel like dying. So yeah, it's like the lyrics on that song are also very kind of relatable as well. Like it's one of the better tracks on the second half of this record. So I will be honest. Like as for my opinion on this record, the first half is like really good, and definitely very well crafted in terms of like synthesizers and lyrics and stuff like that. On the second half, however, I was kind of on the fence with it, with tracks like Disciples that kind of felt like a half-finished song. While I did like the synths and the guitars on that one, it also was kind of didn't need to be there, and I don't know why Tame Impala even released it as a single because a single is usually a finished song with a chorus and all that, and this one just feels like a demo that's like half finished than an actual song. Song. And I did like the bass groove and the nasty guitar riff on "Cause I'm a Man." Cause I'm a man. But the vocals on it did feel kind of overbearing, overbearing a little bit, and plus so like the falsetto on it kind of sounds a little generic, and sounds like basically a falsetto I've heard from a million other indie bands so it's so it's the kind of thing, it sounds kind of generic, but yet it would really fit in with an indie festival list. Full list. The Needle Drop recently did a review of this album, and I definitely agree with what he had to say about this record for the most part. So and the track Reality and Motion had some pretty, overbearing vocals on it, too. I'm not saying I hate it or anything, I'm just, I'm just explaining a little bit of constructive criticism. So I'm just being honest here. So I'm not being negative or anything like that. I did like the sexy synth bass groove on the last track on this album, New Person, Same Old Mistakes. But, the vocals also did kind of feel kind of overwhelming on this track. Overwhelming on this track, that's for sure. But the synths on the song did sound really nice on here. And the balance between the lo-fi recording and the clean recording did sound pretty nice. But, the vocals were kind of, the part that I kind of have a little bit of, criticism, that I have a little kind of criticism with. But the one track on here that really lost me was the song Past Life, which has this really weird, low-pitched, monologue going on with it that just sounded kind of goofy, and definitely made that song definitely the dud moment on this record. So it would have been much better if maybe the monologue was just recorded without the pitch shifting thing. So yeah, definitely kind of definitely my least favorite track on this record. But overall, I am absolutely loving this album. I've already listened to it all the way through at least 3 times already, so even though I definitely have my issues with it, I still really love this record and think this, I know some people probably are going to disagree with me on this record because of the new sound they're going for, but it kills me when bands change their sound and then a lot of people kind of get a little prissy about it. Because, bands gotta change, and you either like the sound or you don't, but don't be expecting them to do the same thing. So yeah, I do recommend this album, but if the sound of, Tame Impala's older sound is all you're interested in, and you're just gonna keep listening to Lonerism, this probably isn't the record for you. But if you're open to change, if you want a really good pop record, this is the record to go for right here. So it's definitely got a bunch of great things about it. It's definitely a well done album. Definitely a well done album full of creative synth lines, nostalgic guitar riffs, sexy bass grooves, twinkling toy pianos, and lyrics that reflect life in such a smart way. So despite my complaints about this record, I overall would give this record a 7 out of 10. That's for sure. This is definitely easily one of the best records of 2015, in my opinion. And the record was just so interesting that and had a lot of interesting moments on it that I just felt the need to talk about it. And plus, I was kind of skeptical a little bit, but I listened to this record and it grew on me the more I listened to it. Once you kind of sink it in and kind of, listen carefully to it, it's a great album. So that was my review on Currents, the new record by Tame Impala. And I'll see you for episode 63. This is Joshua Kirk, signing off.